The substitute, with the main character. The substitute, with the main character. Hezulin is a heartthrob, adored by everyone. The new emperor likes him, the prime minister and generals in the court admire him, and the late emperor even had the astronomical bureau fabricate the absurd lie that marrying Hezulin would cure his illness, just to make him the Lord Empress. As for Shueya, he is merely a substitute used by those who can't have Hezulin to amuse themselves. At first, Shueya only wanted to survive, even if it meant wearing clothes meant for women. But then he discovered that his dreams could predict the future. In that future, he meets a tragic end, dying in the palace with his body wrapped in a straw mat. Wanting both life and wealth, Shueya decisively decides to replace Hezulin. Thus, he embarks on various paths of sabotaging Hezulin in various ways, even going so far as to sow discord between Hezulin and others. But one day, when he sneaks out of the new emperor's palace late at night wearing a skirt, he encounters a drunk Hezulin. The next day, Shueya sees the skirt shredded into strips. From that day on, his skirts always end up shredded in Hezulin's palace, and he no longer needs to fake the marks on his body. Reading guide. Hezulin is the top, a heterosexual man in the face of men other than the show. Facing the show, he automatically bends like mosquito coils. The top only likes the bottom, with an exceptionally thick arrow, which is not evident in the early stage and has no intimate behavior with others. The bottom is a pretty fool. The substitute, with the main character Chapter 1. After the Mid-Autumn Festival in Qing County, the heat of summer receded, and the scent of osmanthus filled the air, making it the most comfortable time of year. But in a small residence in Qing County, there were unexpectedly 3 layers of iron cavalry surrounding it, with another layer of guards with swords at their waists inside. Among them, even if only 2 or 3 drew their long swords, it was enough to make Shueya tremble. Shueya was 16 years old and had never seen such a situation before. Shueya was born into a lowly background, growing up in a brothel. Typically, a person like him would be put up for sale at the age of 15, but Shueya was lucky. On the first day he was put on display, he was purchased by a frail but kind-hearted benefactor. The benefactor was not only kind-hearted but also quite handsome. Shueya was prepared to offer himself, but to his surprise, the benefactor didn't sleep with him. Instead, he just wanted Shueya to stay by his side and attend to him. The tasks were trivial, like singing songs or pouring tea. The benefactor doted on him, never even saying a harsh word. After spending a year with the benefactor, Shueya almost forgot the hardships of his first 15 years, strutting around like a little peacock every day. Ordinary courtesans, once redeemed, couldn't leave the confines of their new home and were often confined within 4 walls. But Shueya was different. As long as he wore a veiled hat and was accompanied by servants, he could stroll the streets freely. However, such comfortable days were too short-lived for Shueya. This evening, the benefactor suddenly passed away. Before Shueya could even cry, dozens of men burst into the modest house. They were tall, armed with swords at their waists, and looked fierce. Terrified, Shueya collapsed to the ground, his legs giving out, and was dragged into the courtyard by his hair without any resistance. He didn't understand much of what happened next because a large blade was pressed against the back of his neck, making him too scared to lift his head. His knees were sore, and his legs went numb. Finally, he heard a familiar voice. This person was bought by His Majesty to sing. We investigated his background before purchasing him. He comes from a slave family, his mother was a prostitute, and his father is unknown. He grew up in the Red Moon House. The voice belonged to Housekeeper Wang, the housekeeper who served the benefactor. Housekeeper Wang had never liked Shueya. Shueya was stunned as he listened to Housekeeper Wang's words. His Majesty, did he hear that correctly? But before he could figure this out, he heard the housekeeper continue, he is just a slave, and the general can handle him as he pleases. Shueya trembled all over, ignoring the large knife at his neck, and tremblingly said, don't kill me, I. Before he could finish speaking, he was viciously hit on the head, the back of the blade hitting his head. This blow made Shueya's ears buzz and his eyes dark. The Lord Empress has not yet come out. Let's wait for the Lord Empress to decide. A deep and steady male voice sounded. Despite feeling dizzy, Shueya strained to listen to their conversation. They mentioned the Emperor, a general, and now the Lord Empress. As he thought about it carefully, cold sweat began to form on his back. Everyone knew that the current Emperor had married a Lord Empress. When it came to this Lord Empress, Shueya had heard some things from others. The Lord Empress was named Hezulin, who came from a distinguished family. At 16, he had become the top scholar in the imperial exams. He then entered the Hanlin Academy, becoming an editor and later being promoted to assistant minister of the Hanlin Academy. After a few years, he was elevated to Grand Scholar of the Hanlin Academy. Just as he was at the peak of his career, the current emperor fell gravely ill, and no medicine could cure him. The Astronomical Bureau divined day and night and finally predicted that someone could bring luck to the emperor and cure his illness. That person was Hezulin. Though the Li dynasty favored male relationships, there had never been a precedent of a man bringing marriage blessing to another man to cure an illness, let alone Hezulin, the grand scholar, doing so for the emperor. Shuya didn't understand the intricacies of this event, as he was only 12 years old when it happened. In the end, not only did Hezulin bring marriage blessing to the emperor, but he also became the empress. Because Hezulin was a man, people called him the Lord Empress instead of Empress. Realizing that the sickly person he had served for a year might be the current emperor, Shuya felt utterly hopeless, thinking he wouldn't survive. Yet, he was unwilling to accept his fate. He was still young and had not yet enjoyed a good life. When he left the Red Moon House, he had boasted to the people there, saying he was going to live a good life and told them not to envy him. But now he was about to die. Firmly believing that it's better to live in hardship than to die, Shuya was filled with fear and anxiety, desperately thinking of ways to stay alive. However, he couldn't think of any solution, his heart pounding with anxiety. At this moment, he heard housekeeper Wang's extremely obsequious voice call out, "Lord Empress." Following this, the previous steady male voice also called out, "Lord Empress." Hearing this, Shuya dared not move. In an ordinary household, this Lord Empress would be like the main wife, and he, as someone kept outside by the master, would naturally fear the main wife. Not to mention, this was not an ordinary main wife but the current Lord Empress. Shuya held his breath, but he felt a boot in front of him, lifting his face with irresistible force. He didn't dare struggle, raising his face stiffly, tears welling up the moment he lifted his head. Having spent many years in the brothel, he knew how to appear pitiful to evoke sympathy countless times. Although the person in front of him was technically his main wife, Shuya thought it was worth a try. As long as the other person was human, he might evoke some pity. But as he raised his head and prepared to beg for mercy, he was stunned. The reason was simple, the young man's appearance was strikingly similar to his own. But despite the similarity in facial features, their overall demeanors were entirely different. The young man, dressed in a dark blue wide-sleeved robe, had a face that was handsome and noble, with an aura of elegance and majesty, looking like an immortal being. Shuya had always been confident in his own looks, but upon seeing this face, he felt a sudden sense of inferiority. It was as if he was just a counterfeit of the person in front of him. Aside from appearance and demeanor, the other person's aura was extraordinary. Despite carrying no weapon, simply standing there, he outshone the group of armed guards behind him, especially with his scrutinizing gaze that sent chills down one's spine. At this moment, Shuya suddenly remembered how the benefactor often stared at his face. He had thought it was due to his beauty, but now it seemed he had been regarded as a substitute for the person in front of him, a way to reminisce about someone else. In the Red Moon House, there was a guest who did the same, finding a boy who resembled his deceased lover. Back then, Shuya had laughed at both the substitute and the one looking for a substitute, but now he was the joke. He didn't dare laugh or cry, curling up and staying still. After what felt like an eternity, the boot lifting his chin was withdrawn. Immediately, someone knelt and meticulously wiped the young man's boot with a silk cloth. Shuya noticed that the person cleaning the boot was housekeeper Wang, who never liked him. He felt a twitch at the corner of his mouth but quickly lowered his head again. Without seeing the young man's face, he dared to use his looks to appear pitiful. Now, he wished he could hide his face entirely. Shuya thought no one liked seeing their own counterfeit. He believed he was doomed. His mother had told him he would achieve great things in life, but now it seemed he would disappoint her. After a brief silence, Shuya finally heard a voice. "Take him away." The voice was soft, like the clinking of jade. "Yes." As soon as this was said, Shuya felt a heavy blow to the back of his neck and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was on a cart, tightly bound, surrounded by boxes. After spending a moment feeling lucky to be alive, Shuya tried to peek out of the cart to see where it was headed, but a large blade immediately blocked his view, scaring him into retreat. Outside, he heard mocking laughter. "Careful, broken rabbit, or you'll lose your head." He wasn't a broken rabbit. If he were, he would be a fragrant one. Shuya couldn't help but snort in his heart. He knew most men despise them, calling them rabbit boys, but he thought, having been redeemed, he no longer counted as one. Shuya no longer dared to stick his head out, but after thinking for a while, he gathered the courage to ask, "Sir, where are we going?" "To the capital." Whether the person outside took pity on him or thought it was harmless to tell him, they directly revealed the destination. Upon hearing the word, capital, Shuya's face turned pale. Half a month later, Shuya arrived at the capital, a place he had only heard about from merchants. The legendary capital, filled with opulent palaces and vibrant streets. Author's note: the protagonist here is a low-level green tea show, a pretty fool, so don't expect too much from him. The main character, Hezulin, also known as Lord Empress, is a staunchly straight man to everyone but the protagonist, around whom he bends like a mosquito coil. Time passed slowly as Shuya knelt on the soft carpet, not daring to make any unnecessary movements. Upon arriving in the capital a few days ago, he hadn't even glimpsed the city's scenery through the carriage curtains before being confined. Today, after being roughly scrubbed in a bath, he was brought here to kneel. The palace was magnificent, with intricate carvings and embroidered pillars. The hanging green silk curtains with gold threads exuded a subtle fragrance. The carpet was exceptionally pure, its origin unrecognizable but clearly expensive due to the absence of any stray hairs. The palace attendants moved gracefully, walking like cats. The hall was quiet, except for the sound of someone flipping through a book. Just as Shuya was starting to feel dizzy from kneeling, he finally heard a voice from above. "What is your name?" Hearing this, Shuya secretly pinched himself to stay alert. For the past half-month, he had been surviving on 2 bowls of light porridge a day, and today he hadn't had a drop of water before being brought here. "Your humble servant's name is Shuya," he replied, trembling. "Shuya, a tea name, quite elegant." The young man's voice paused slightly. "Raise your head." Nervously swallowing, Shuya lifted his head. He glanced at the other's face and quickly lowered his gaze. The night he had seen Hezulan, he had been struck by his beauty. Seeing him now in daylight, he was even more overwhelmed. Hezulan, dressed in a simple light blue old robe, held a book, his expression indifferent. Compared to the exhausted Shuya, Hezulan looked energetic and luminous. "I have a few questions for you. You must answer them clearly," Hezulan said. Shuya nodded vigorously. Hezulan's questions all related to the benefactor. When asked about the benefactor's nightly habits, Shuya sheepishly shook his head. "Your humble servant does not know." Hezulan's eyes seemed to hold a deeper meaning. "You don't know. Your humble servant never attended to him personally. When the master couldn't sleep, he would sometimes call for your humble servant to sing," Shuya answered truthfully. "What songs did you sing?" Hezulan asked again. Shuya thought for a moment and listed some relatively proper songs. Initially, he had sung some lewd songs for the benefactor, but the benefactor, after laughing at first, had gradually grown stern and told him not to sing such songs again. Quick to catch on, Shuya switched to more proper songs. Among them, the benefactor's favorite was Yearning. This song tells the story of a woman who longs for a certain gentleman. Using her prominent family background, she manages to be with him, but instead of a happy marriage, they become a resentful couple. In the end, the woman is left alone in an empty room, singing this song, Yearning, every night. After answering this, the hall fell silent. After an indeterminate amount of time, a voice from outside announced, "His Highness, the Crown Prince, has arrived." The Crown Prince. Shuya quickly lowered his head further. "Let him in." Hezulan's voice seemed colder than before. The sound of the pearl curtain swaying was followed by a young voice, still unbroken, clear and bright. "Your son greets you, Godfather." The Crown Prince, 16 years old, named Qilingjing, bore a delicate face resembling his mother's. He walked quickly to Hezulan's side and naturally noticed the person kneeling on the ground. Glancing at Shuya, he greeted Hezulan, his eyes still slightly red, his voice somewhat hoarse. "Royal son couldn't sleep all night thinking of you, Godfather. After leaving the academy, I came straight here." Hezulan nodded. "You are filial, but you must take care of your health. In a few days, it will be your royal father's funeral and your coronation ceremony." The Crown Prince acknowledged, his gaze returning to the person kneeling on the ground. After a moment, he said, "Godfather, is this the person who served my royal father?" "Yes," Hezulan replied. The Crown Prince's eyes flickered, and he immediately looked up. "Godfather, I dare to ask if you could grant this person to me." Without waiting for Hezulan's response, he continued, "A year ago, my royal father left the capital, and apart from Wang Gonggong and other long-serving servants, there was only him. It has been determined that my royal father died of natural causes, unrelated to this person. I miss my royal father and would like him to stay by my side to recount my royal father's stories." Hearing the Crown Prince's words, Shuya's eyes lit up. He had thought he was doomed, but now there seemed to be a chance for reprieve. From the Crown Prince's words, he seemed like a kind person. The emperor was a great benefactor, and his son appeared to be a good person too. Moreover, as the Crown Prince, he would become the next emperor after the emperor's death, the supreme ruler. If Shuya could serve the Crown Prince well, wouldn't he achieve unimaginable wealth and fortune? In just a few moments, Shuya's mind had already turned to how he could serve the Crown Prince well. However, Hezulan's voice brought him back to reality. "We should ask his opinion first," Hezulan said, his tone neither warm nor cold. "Do you want to serve the Crown Prince?" Shuya paused, slowly raising his head. He looked at the handsome young man in front of him and forced a smile. This humble servant is willing to work tirelessly for the Crown Prince, to ease his worries. As soon as he finished speaking, he noticed a change in the young man's expression. There was a hint of mockery, perhaps even pity in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly that Shuya couldn't be sure. Then he heard Hezulan speak again. Then take him with you. Upon hearing this, Shuya felt only joy and didn't pay attention to Hezulan's final glance. He kept his head down and followed the crown prince's attendants out of Ningfu Palace. He thought it over. Serving the crown prince would certainly be better than staying with Hezulan. He bore some resemblance to Hezulan and had served the emperor in his final moments, which might make Hezulan harbor resentment towards him. The crown prince taking him away was a rescue from his misery. Having gained the emperor's favor, it shouldn't be too difficult to win a bit of the crown prince's favor as well. Thinking of this, Shuya stole a glance at the young man in the bright yellow robe ahead. The youth had a slender waist and long legs, like a bamboo shoot growing vigorously, full of vitality. The crown prince's palace was the Eastern Palace. With the coronation ceremony just a few days away, the Eastern Palace was bustling and uneasy. Palace maids in flowing skirts moved like fish, stopping to bow obediently whenever they saw the crown prince. Ignoring those kneeling on the ground, the crown prince walked through corridors and bridges straight to a side hall. Following the crown prince and his attendants, Shuya couldn't help but look around. This place was beautiful, with flowing streams and lush vegetation, exquisite and luxurious in every detail. Shuya was dazzled, sneaking glances at the scenery as he followed the group. As they were about to enter the hall, he quickly lowered his eyes and followed inside. Noticing the people ahead stopping, he also halted. Just as he hesitated about kneeling, a voice filled with intense disgust sounded. Bring me my whip. Author's note. Shuya, bully me now, but there will be a time when you'll regret it, humph.